Welcome to the Ladies Meeting Podcast. Today we're going to meet with Sylvia Bogusz on financial planning. The Ladies Meeting meets live every last Tuesday of the month, except for December, in Vancouver, British Columbia. And you can find us at theladiesmeeting.com. This podcast is produced by the Communications Studio, and my name is Anissa Carruthers, and I look forward to seeing you at our events and online.
Which is quite funny. Okay, good morning. It is long weekend here in Whistler, and we'll wait for the airplane to go over. Hopefully you can still hear me. I'm in Alta Vista, so I just ran down to the lake, and I have Sylvia here, and we were looking for a bio on her, so I'm going to let her totally introduce herself. We're also over here on Facebook Live, my little extra outdoor studio piece. So anyone who's on Facebook Live, this is part of, hi over there, this is part of our 30-day personal money planning. And so I asked Sylvia if she would talk a little bit about life insurance, because that is what she does. And I'd also like to hear what you were studying yesterday. So give us a little brief intro on yourself and take us on a journey.
Take you on a journey. Well, thank you.
On how we get rich.
It's also dangerous territory, because really now I get to tell you anything that I want about myself, and who knows where that could lead.
Well, you know, from some of the Twitter posts and requests I get, I'm pretty sure that some of those people are telling me anything as well. But just for those of you that don't know, Sylvia is one of our members at the Ladies Meeting. You can find us at theladiesmeeting.com. You can also hear other audios and written pieces about her. I've met her live and in person, and she is most often at our last Tuesday of the month meeting at the Sylvia Hotel. I think at some point we have to get a Sylvia burger on there as well. In the menu. So she's taking you on a journey.
Well, I've had the pleasure of coming to the Ladies Meeting. Yeah, for over the last year, been coming out and visiting you guys. I think I've known you for a little bit longer. I love the fact that the Ladies Meeting is held at the Sylvia Hotel. I just feel like I'm entering my own show every time I walk in. I'm like, yeah, I'm here. But yeah, so I have been in the financial services industry for just about 4 years now. I do a variety of insurance type services, investment services, but I'm really passionate about a couple things, and working with entrepreneurs is one of my favorite things to do, simply because I'm constantly so inspired and just lit up by the people that I get to work with, and I'm lucky to call my friends and clients because they're just doing something that not everybody else does, which is decide to chase after a dream and pursue the less walked. And because of that, they're going to have a totally different set of needs, and that's something that I really enjoy helping people with. But it also means that they're going to have a totally awesome and amazing and different life, and that is just the joy that I get from working with these types of people.
Awesome.
So yeah, I come from a background, I was born and raised here. Well, actually, I was born in Edmonton, lasted about 8 months, and my parents were like, no, we're coming to Vancouver, where it's beautiful and sunny and significantly better than Edmonton.
Yeah, I finally visited Edmonton last summer, and yeah, it's a nice place to visit.
Yeah, so I grew up here. I went to school in Montreal for a couple years. I was studying economics, and then I realized that I missed Vancouver, that I wanted to be in business, that I wanted to start putting down roots here and meeting people and meeting connections in the city that I wanted to work in. So I moved back here. I took a year off. I did some working, some traveling, went back to school at SFU, still for economics, and started working with Desjardins while I was in school there. Got my licensing, did my training for the first 6 months while I was over at Desjardins, and then I switched over to Canada Financial, and I've been there ever since, working as an independent broker and financial advisor.
And what were you taking yesterday that you were studying so hard for?
Yeah, so I'm doing my CFP courses right now, which is super well, it's exciting to be in the process. Some of the material is a little bit dry, but I have a theory on life that is, there are no boring subjects, there are only boring people.
And what is CFP? What does that stand for?
Certified Financial Planner. Sorry, used to using the jargon.
Yes, yeah, I'll get into our little acronyms depending on where we are and what we do.
I know, we're just like, stop, don't do it. Yeah, I gotta stamp that reflex out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've been taking my CFP courses, my Certified Financial Planner courses. Finished one last night, which was very exciting. So, woo!
So question, how did you, just because I've been doing this 30-day money plan every day and I've been having some really deep realizations about what I do and why I do it. Yeah, it's actually, or as Jennifer would say, palms up, Jennifer Love. Um, deep realizations in talking about money every day and watching my money every day, about why I'm doing what I'm doing and where I'm going. Like, sometimes it's just been, I'm also, well, and the other part to that too is I've gone back into Toastmasters and I have to do my icebreaker speech and like recording it and finding these deep gut feelings. And I find that a lot of people go into their profession because of something in their background. Do you think there's something as a child that brought you to want to control and help other people with their money?
Good question.
Sorry,
Yeah,
go
so
deep.
I've been to a few self-development, self-awareness kind of courses around money. I've taken a few online. I think that hands down the most interesting part of working with money is just the fact that when you think about it, like we live in a fiat money system, right? So our money is just a piece of paper that somebody says is worth something. So
Mhm.
everything that we have dealing with money, it's everything that we are projecting onto it and all of our histories and stories and belief patterns, some of them empowering, some of them very limiting and disempowering.
Mhm.
And when I dig into my own history and my own childhood and experiences, I grew up in a family where my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was the breadwinner, and he was not very happy being the breadwinner. So he had a lot of anger around providing. There was a lot of conflict in my house that centered around money.
Mhm.
And I just, as a little kid, kind of came to this decision, which you don't realize until you look back at it, but I vowed to never be dependent on somebody else for money. So being able to take control of my finances, learn about that, and then help other people so that they didn't have to experience that kind of pain or dependency, that's a big thing for me.
Yeah, that's huge. I discovered that part of the reason I want to go into coaching is well, first of all, I thought it was very different too, is my mom and both my parents did not have stable family life for a reason
Mm,
we don't need to talk about, between alcohol and stuff like that. So
mm-hmm,
I found that she controlled everything to the penny. Um,
mm-hmm,
and I found I went the opposite way because everything had to be so controlled. I was just like, I'm not going to look at it. And so now that I've started looking at it, I've realized part of the reason I want to go into coaching, which is that next level, is because I've never been able to help her be happy. Like, she controlled the money. She bought I had this realization. She bought a house at the same time, same age I am now, 46 or 47, maybe a
mm-hmm,
little bit older, and paid it off within like amazing amount of time, which I'm so proud of her. But I've never seen my parents really happy. They're both, my dad is, they've both aged so quickly. When I look at if I reflect on their relatives in Sweden, which is, the ultimate happy place where everybody has money and things seem to flow and there's inheritance that, they're at,
mm-hmm,
I always say, fifth or sixth generation of inheritance. There's just more stability. There's school paid for, things like that. And they never had any of that. And I haven't seen them like, they didn't plan for retirement, I guess is the other part too.
mm-hmm.
So I just don't see that. They haven't retired into a dream or a goal or anything like that. And I think that's where I am, is I want to help people to achieve that, because there's nothing I could ever do or say. And when I say do, I think that's one of the reasons I went to university, was like to show her, like, hey, you can go finish your GED. Like, you can do anything
Mm,
at any time, because I didn't do it till my kids were in elementary school. And realize that when you start to come to those deep realizations, because you're watching what you're doing every day, it's really interesting. And I think it really plays into being in the,
mm-hmm.
being in the right place to help people, which it sounds like you are.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's so, what you said about your parents, I really can mirror those feelings. My parents both, they have a interesting retirement ahead of them.
Mhm.
But I think it's interesting what we learn from watching people who we want to imitate and who we want to model, and then even people as close to us as our parents. A lot of the time we are driven by, wow, I'm never going to walk down that same path.
Mhm. Well, and I think the other thing to get over too, that I think happens for a lot of people, is to do better than your parents. There's a certain guilt factor
Mm,
of surpassing them as well. And I know that for me, that kind of held me back, because I didn't want to be a show off. I didn't want to I didn't want to do better because I felt bad to a certain point until I did, like you, I think that's probably how we actually met, is through some personal growth seminars and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Is you have to learn that that's okay to do your best and not compare yourself to someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, well, just the way that we have these limiting beliefs, and a lot of those belief patterns, they just are things we picked up in childhood from our parents before we even realized that we were picking up a belief. And now that's something that's carried with us and carried us through to the rest of our lives. And I think it's especially interesting when you see some ways of thinking about the world that have driven people to a lot of
Mm-hmm.
a lot of happiness, and vice versa when you see things that have prevented people from achieving success, but they might have found happiness in very different ways. I think that the psychology behind it and how it all ties into finances and family dynamics is so interesting.
One of the, well, I've been listening to money stories for the last month, and one of them was the gentleman who was given a chunk of gold and told to, as a gift, because he was poor, and he never spent it, but it gave him such joy and a feeling of security. They went out and became very successful, and when he went to finally cash it in as an old man, he found out that it was just grass.
Oh wow.
Yeah, to me, I think that explains in a metaphor, because we love metaphors, exactly what you're saying, is that we have these inner beliefs that can just project us or crush us, especially with.
Yeah. Well, so wait, he got to retirement and then he was like crushed that this was just a piece of
No,
grass?
he was given this piece of gold, what he thought was a piece of gold.
Yeah.
Because he felt secure and happy that he had it, he went out and he felt like he could be successful, and he was extremely successful, and
Oh,
never had to
okay.
actually cash it in. He went out and worked and became, wealthy in life. And at the end of his life, he went to cash it in, just, like to cash out, I guess, and found out it had never been gold.
Oh, I like that
And
story.
so he had never really needed gold to be successful.
Yeah.
He just needed that feeling of wealth, of personal wealth, to get going. And that,
Exactly.
for him, that gold, knowing that was gold, filled some empty space that helped him go out and work really, really hard, which is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So
That is
how?
interesting. I read an article a little while ago. It was actually about Warren Buffett and his son. So rewind a number of years, and Warren Buffett gave his son stock that would have amounted to about $90,000 at the time, but today would be worth billions. And the son cashed it out and took that money, and he went and I think he was in the music industry, and so he basically used that $90,000 to absolutely chase his own dreams, pursue his own career, and he's led a very happy, successful life doing his completely own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And in the article, the way that the title had it was almost like, oh, how could his son do this? What a fool's move to take that stock and cash it out when it would be worth so much today. But then you actually look deeper and you see that the pursuing of somebody's own dreams and being able to achieve your own success, I think that gave him so much happiness that could never have been measured in a financial number.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's why when working with people, it's interesting because everybody's heard what they've heard from different advisors or bankers or their families, and they have their beliefs about what financial planning should be. So I had a friend recently say, hey, I was talking to someone and they said that if I don't have double my income saved by the time I'm 30, then I'm not going to be on track for retirement. And it was just this absolutely obscure saving metric that someone had been told and was telling other people. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that when it comes to financial planning, it's so personal. It depends on what the goals that somebody really wants to achieve are, and then finding ways to put numbers behind those goals, not striving for just a sum of money in a bank account after a certain number of years, because that's going to bring nobody happiness.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. For me, figuring out that my mom hadn't purchased her house after the age I am now was a huge wake-up call for me, because I don't have a huge amount of savings in the bank because of my car accident in the last 2 years. I had to go through my savings that I had earned in selling 2 houses, actually. And so I've been kind of hard on myself. But then I realized I have no distractions now and no excuses, because when I purchased, I've owned 3 houses, given away one to my ex-husband, so I knew where my children were. And during that time, I was going to university, raising 2 kids, dealing with an ex-husband, divorce, all sorts of stuff parents. My parents are now both in different homes and safe. Like, I feel it's like this huge burden. So I have no excuses for going out and doing exactly what she did. But it's just, if I hadn't done this 30-day like focus on my money, I don't think I would have come to that realization. So having someone else tell you these different stories. One of the things I heard yesterday, which is why this came up too, is that someone said you should just rent, it's cheaper. But if she hadn't paid off her house, they wouldn't have been able to really enjoy the equity that they achieved with that house. They came out, they doubled their investment. They sold it for double what they paid for it, and I'm sure they remortgaged it and paid off bills, and they ran their business out of it as well. So how are you using that investment too? Because basically their business paid off a lot of that house versus their personal income. So everyone's story is different. I think you make a really good point there. You can't just listen to a personal advisor or a story and apply it to yourself without really realizing what your story is and how you're going to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you're one tough lady. You've gone through so much, and you're such an amazing, amazing woman.
Feels like nothing compared to, I have a cousin with a kid with cancer right now, so I feel like I've been through nothing. I have two super healthy kids and a grandchild, and we all have a different story and we all manage, and I don't see mine as I see so many much more tough things going on. But thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, everybody walks their own path, and it's interesting that you bring up real estate, because I feel like in Vancouver and the greater Vancouver area, stretching up to where you are as well, we have just seen such astronomical growth. I mean, in the last, since 2009, we have seen the equivalent of growth as we have in the last 30 years.
Yeah,
so basically
insane.
In the last 10 years, we've seen more growth than we have in the last 30. It's compared to the last 30. It's astronomical how rapidly the market has grown. And because of that, I think that real estate it's a very popular thing to talk about and to be obsessed about. But I also think that it's important we not get too obsessed about it. I mean, especially Vancouver real estate as an investment has seen this unprecedented growth, but when you look at the metrics like cap rates, capitalization rates of properties, we're quite low compared to other cities. We range between like 2 and 3%. So I think that when we look at, to buy real estate or to rent real estate, there's no right or wrong, and it's very much dependent on what somebody's situation. And I've definitely seen a lot of clients feel quite shamed for not owning property, or a little overly zealous because they do own property. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I think that we have to realize too, we are on the West Coast, so we don't have the same, as I was talking about, generational input financially. So we're not, so for example, my dad's father died when he was 4. He never inherited any property from his father. If you lived on the East Coast and you've got 3 to 5 generations of wealth, and that might just be working class wealth too. You've got, maybe 4 or 5 generations, somebody paid off a house, and that's inherited, and that means the ability to go to university, to increase your income. Or for example, I live in Whistler, where a lady who worked at, she's a young woman, she works at BCIT, and she lives up part-time, and her house is, she bought a condo up here, a $500,000 condo, and you're going, how does she afford that? And probably her parents put a pretty big chunk of that up, and why shouldn't they? They're probably an immigrant family who came here, worked really, really hard. I have some very good friends who they immigrated to Canada, and they've both worked full time since they were very young. Both their kids have cars that are paid off. They have university paid off. They have great investments. Everybody has a different story. And how people achieve their goals is going to be very different, because we all have different backgrounds and different family backgrounds. And I have a friend who won $1 million and bought his house that way.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
I read a study one time. It was talking about where you're going to get the funds for retirement. 34% of Canadians said that they're going to rely on the lottery for their retirement. I'm not joking. But
I only have 1% of my friends that have actually won the lottery, enough money that they could retire. So, it is 1%, I think, is really probably a more realistic.
probably more realistic.
But
But
speaking
it's
about
interesting that you bring
retirement,
that up, because when
yeah.
it comes to families, and I think that one question we all have to ask ourselves is, what is the legacy that we want to leave behind for our children or grandchildren? You
Mhm.
know, and the same way that it can be something as small, like it doesn't have to. I think that a misconception in the financial world is that in order to leave a legacy, you have to have significant wealth to do it.
Mhm.
And I think
Well,
that that is just fundamentally untrue. I think it's quite possible to leave a legacy in a very small way or a large way. And interestingly, life insurance is one of the tools where certain communities, certain types of people, people with certain beliefs or ideas or whatever it is, you know, they really see life insurance as a way to create a legacy for their children or grandchildren.
mhm. Well, I'm really lucky in that, and that's one of the reasons we want to talk about life insurance. So my children will be getting no financial wealth to either I pass, or maybe someone can explain to me this money that I can cash in later. But my daughter, for example, she's turning 24 this week. And her and her husband, she's been married for a couple of years. They have a 3-year-old, and her husband have decided to live in the interior where real estate is much more affordable. They bought a house for $315,000 with support from his mom. He's an only child, and she works so hard. Like, her house is paid off, and so at 24 she owns her own house. She's running her business out of her daycare, so she's got the write-off. She's doing university, and she has her own business. So, you know, that's an unusual story these days. But her friends are actually, who are in the same age group now, are going, oh, we can all move to Kamloops and afford property. So I think there's just a generation that has to shift from where they want to live, maybe, as well, depending on what career path they've taken. So
I think that you're right. There's definitely quite an exodus of people from Vancouver moving further east. But I think also in seeing something that was taken for granted start to become unaffordable for a large number of people is also shifting the way that people think about their estate planning and about their financial planning. So for example, a couple weeks ago I was dealing with a couple clients who are right on the cusp of retirement. They've got 3 kids, and one of their core beliefs is that they want to help their children in any way that they can, especially financially. So more and more of these parents, as they're aging, as they're planning for retirement, they want to incorporate into those plans ways to help their children, whether that's with a down payment on a property, or whether that's helping to purchase equipment for a business, or helping fund their grandchildren's education. I think that we're definitely seeing a lot of people really want to plan for helping the people that they love.
absolutely. So how can we do that through life insurance?
Great question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so with life insurance, there's a couple ways that I've worked with clients where they've wanted to provide something for their kids. So one of the interesting things that a lot of people don't know about some of our famous Vancouver claim to fame, Mr. Jim Pattison,
Mm-hmm.
is that he actually got the funds to start his first car dealership. He was turned down by the banks, and he ended up using the cash values in his life insurance policy.
I think that's a great story. I've heard it told by a couple people,
Mm-hmm.
actually. Or, oh, you know what? I think I was given a video at one of the talks that I went to, and it's a great
Mm-hmm.
story.
It is a cool story. Actually, one of the interesting things about like the Jim Pattison Foundation is that you can reach out to them and they'll send you a personally addressed letter. So I have a letter from
What?
Jimmy P. Yeah, I have a letter from Jimmy P saying, "Hey, I endorse. I think that life insurance is a really great tool, and it's what helped me get started." Yeah, I'll send it to you after this if you want to see
Oh,
it.
that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what we should do is
Yeah,
we should all send him one signed from the ladies' meeting. That would be fun.
yeah,
And I'm
for
just
the ladies.
saying hi to Sandrine because she's actually watching us on Facebook. So
Oh.
we have a viewer. Hi, Sandrine. So
Yeah,
what is
and so similar thing also happened with Walt Disney and J.C. Penney. Both of them, they also used the cash values in their life insurance policies to get started. So historically, over the years, life insurance has been one of the most reliable and stable savings vehicles. And just since kind of, I don't know, maybe the last 30 years, as markets have really taken off, they've become more of an alternative investment and not so mainstream anymore.
Mhm.
But within life insurance policies that have cash values, you know, it's possible to use that money to borrow it, to repay it the compounding continues uninterrupted. If you're taking a loan from yourself, all of your returns can be market sheltered. It's a completely tax sheltered investment vehicle. And then at the end of your life, it's going to leave or create a legacy for the people that you love and that you're leaving your estate to.
One of the eye openers for me when I got life insurance was, I was sold on making sure that everything was insured, but no one ever told me when I needed to de-insure, because I had certain debts that I needed to be covered in case I passed away. And now that my children are grown and don't really need my support that much, but I still want to leave them something. I don't have mortgages that I'm covering anymore right now, which will change again in the future. So I have $200,000, $100,000 for each of them, that they can, if something happens to me right now, I know my son could go and buy a house or go and get an education or follow his dream, which is I think it's interesting. It's close to that $90,000 mark that can help somebody really dig into a dream if they've got a passion that they need to fulfill. It gives them probably 2 to 3 years to invest and live and get going. So it's not a huge amount of money, but one of the things that tweaked me is when I got my piece of paper that I wanted to show you actually today, that of course didn't turn up, was I didn't realize I was getting 6.75% on my investment, which these days is not bad.
No, it's not bad at all. Yeah, so I think that's, first off, it's awesome that you've got stuff in place, and second off, it's important that you bring up that concept of like, what is the need for insurance? Because I think there are many people out there where they believe so strongly in insurance that they're saying, oh, there's never such a thing as too much insurance. But it's always important to be touching base and checking in with what's going on for you. You used to have a mortgage, you used to have children who were dependent, you had really high needs, as do many young parents. But as life goes on, those needs might evolve to become different needs, or they might dissolve and no longer be so relevant within the context of your financial planning. So it's good to always just keep abreast and keep aware of what's going on within our situations. And
Oh, you died out there. Hopefully you're going to come back in a minute. Okay, I can't hear Sylvia right now. I don't know if it's recording her talking or not. Hopefully on both ends. Oh, you're back. We lost you there for a minute.
hey,
We lost you there for a minute.
okay, I wasn't sure if I lost you or you lost me, or
You just froze up on this end. So, okay, we were talking about the amount of insurance, basically, and looking at how much you possibly need.
yeah. So sorry, I don't know where I cut out.
Just
But
somewhere around there. It was just for about 30 to 60 seconds. So,
okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I think the main takeaway from what you were saying there is that it's super important to not stop asking those questions and to not stop. I think that a lot of the time life just gets all lifey, and we stop meeting with our advisors, or we forget to say, they call us and they're just like, hey, it's time for your review. And next week, next month. And then all of a sudden,
so guilty. I am so guilty of that.
That's all right. Part of my job is, honestly, it's just herding cats. It's herding the cats. Yeah, just to be politely persistent. Hey, how are you? But yeah, so I mean, I think it's just continuing to ask those questions, because it can go one of two ways, right? So for a lot of people who get into the later years and they're approaching retirement and they have estate planning needs, they might find that the amount of their life insurance will actually, the amount that they need will even stay the same or increase depending on what their estate planning needs are. On the other hand, they might find that their requirements drastically decrease. And that's where you get into situations. I was meeting with a woman, I was meeting with a woman just a couple weeks ago, and she didn't even know that she had multiple critical illness policies in place. And she thought that her old advisor had replaced one policy with another and canceled the previous policy. And for the last 6 years, she had been paying for a policy that she didn't actually want or need, and she just wasn't even aware of it. And for me, that was actually a really powerful experience to see just how upset and how angry and how hurt she felt because of that. She just felt like her trust had been totally broken because she didn't need this, she didn't want it, and she'd been paying for it for years. Just because another advisor had failed to cancel the policy, or there was a miscommunication and they hadn't been in touch.
Mm-hmm. So to play devil's advocate,
things like that happen. Pardon?
Sorry, so was it to play devil's advocate? Because my advisor has asked me several times to make appointments and I've brushed him off. So it's a matter of, well, is he brushing my file off then too? And so it's interesting that I think that's where really focusing on your money each month does make a difference, so that things like that don't happen.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be able to say from the way that she was explaining it. It sounded like her advisor had been out of touch, and when she met with me, she was pretty eager to sit down and to discuss these things. But I agree with you. I think that there is a very important component where we have to be responsible for what goes on with us, and we have to be aware of what's going on with us. And there are a lot of coaches and experts and advisors out there that we can reach out to and get that higher level of information from, and have somebody who's a trusted counselor who can help us with making the decisions we need to make. But at the end of the day, it's our responsibility to take care of ourselves.
Well, and that's part of what I feel like in going through my life insurance policy and seeing what I had. I realized I had critical illness. I realized that I had a great interest rate. Hopefully, maybe it could be better. I don't know. But I felt in reviewing it, it actually made me feel really grounded. So I think there's the other side too, where it was like, oh, I've been doing this since 2011 or something. This feels really good. It was like that one piece that I could be really kind of proud of, that I haven't, through all of the ups and downs of raising kids, buying, selling houses, going to university, I kept up this life insurance policy. And it's been that one consistent thing. And, at the end it was like, oh, okay, we did one thing good. So, it's consistency too, which is always going to help you.
It is. And one of the not jokes, but like when you think about different types of investments or saving programs, part of the reason that real estate is such a powerful asset is because you're on a forced saving program. If you don't make your mortgage payment every month, the bank is going to call and they're going to take the house away. And it's the same thing with a life insurance policy. It's a forced savings plan. So when life does start to get a little bit tougher, it's very easy to stop the contributions to the TFSA or the RSP, or the van breaks down, we need to get a new minivan, or we have another kid, so maybe we'll taper back on savings for a little bit, which are all valid concerns. But that's part of the problem when the savings program is very flexible, is that people will often choose to cut back on savings, and instead of paying themselves first, instead of reducing, their life expenses or finding other ways to increase their earnings. So with real estate and with life insurance, part of the reason that they're very successful, savings vehicles, is because it's that forced savings.
Well, and I know that people gave me a hard time, especially my lawyer, when I gave my ex-husband the house, because him and his new girlfriend were going to move into another rental. And I thought, there is no advantage to my kids moving around. There's no advantage to their dad being without a permanent house, because I knew that I could buy another house. And there was huge advantage of not going to court and just giving him the house, because I knew where my kids were going to sleep every night. I knew that they would always, they weren't brilliant people. But they would always pay the mortgage. Well, they did that for 10 years. They kept that house, and my kids they never lost a house through the divorce until, their really late years in high school. My daughter in grade 12, my son in grade 10. So that forced investment probably kept them going a lot longer. It gave stability to my kids, but other people thought, gosh, you're giving that away. And sometimes we have to choose between money and stability in life as well. Yeah, I'm sure I would have been financially much further ahead right now to have kept it, but I knew that they would pay their mortgage. We always, that it's kind of a joke. You'll always pay your mortgage, unless you're injured or don't have an injury policy, which I've never had to invoke that. So maybe you could explain a little bit how that works at some point, maybe in person. Mm-hmm. But you're right, life insurance and a mortgage, you'll come out a winner in the end for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love hearing you talk about just not that I love that you've had a divorce and you've had to go through this, but just the way that you prioritize those things over just being the one to win the divorce. It fills my heart.
Well, I see, it's funny because you look back in your life and go, was that a good decision? But I see someone that I work with currently who is literally in court over his children a couple times a month. And it is so destructive. The one piece of advice I got that was do anything to stay out of court when you're getting divorced. I will pass that on to anyone. Do anything to stay out of court because nobody wins.
Absolutely.
So absolutely. It wasn't fun.
People with crazy divorce stories, and it's really sad.
Yeah, no, there were psychologists. These people had psychologists dragged in, so their personal lives are all, because once you're in court, all of your personal life is open to, essentially the public. You're going to have psychologists evaluating you and everything like that. So that's harder. Your own values being judged by outsiders and how you want to raise your children is probably much harder than giving up a house.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also interesting to hear the way that you talk about what money means to you in the sense of bringing that stability. And they've done some interesting studies on the way that men and women value money differently. So for women, they've found that money means security, it means safety, it means the ability to protect and provide for the people that they care about and for themselves. Whereas men tend to relate to money more as a thing to accumulate and actually kind of display to the world as kind of a little bit more prowess. It's more of an accumulation and having it. Whereas with women, it's what does it bring and what can we do with it? So I think that that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And how it affects your children is amazing. I always, people talk about teaching children to be entrepreneurs and stuff like that, it's cool. It's the latest thing. But if you could teach parents with children, grade kindergarten to grade 4, how to have a stable life, that's probably the most effective thing that you can do. Because I think people are either going to be an entrepreneur or they're not. It's often just there or it's not. But if you can make those children feel secure in their homes and the women and parents have a secure lifestyle, then everybody's going to win versus worrying about whether or not children are entrepreneurs. Just my opinion.
Absolutely.
Because I just see kids.
Absolutely.
I've seen enough kids be raised in all different environments with good parents, bad parents getting good kids getting bad parents. And, there doesn't seem to be really any formula as to who's going to end up running their own business. It's something that's deep inside you, that need for that freedom. And I find that I think it actually works the opposite way. The less security that you had at home, the more likelihood it is that you're going to want to have a job. The more secure that you are at home, the more likely you are to explore different venues for making money, different places. The more secure you are, the more adventurous you're going to be. And that's just my experience. So.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I agree with you. I think that finding ways to make kids feel more secure is a very important thing. I also, one of my best friends is a new teacher, and my mom, she's in the education field as well. So I think it's very interesting too, the ways that they're starting to change the curriculum for kids in schools very dramatically, from, the memorize this fact and when did this war happen and come and to take this test and regurgitate all this information that you could just Google in the real world. And the way that they're changing that to kind of make it a lot more engaging and focus on developing actual skills and ability to critical think and those kind of things. I think that a lot of the entrepreneurial programs that I've seen at least have almost been trying to fill that gap, just the ability to be independent and think critically and, do more than just memorize and regurgitate for a test.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's a lot of progress that's being made with our education.
There's a lot of focus on the Finnish school system, and I really have an appreciation for that, the balance that they create in their system.
Northern Europe and all that they do.
Yeah, everything that we wish we were. But we all immigrated to Canada and missed out. We're learning it later in life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Better late than never, but on the other hand, like, I've school systems. yeah.
So we've been
on the other hand, there's also programs where they're starting to program, which is awesome. Like, help kids understand. I remember we had one day where they were like, this is a tax return. This is how you fill it out. Nobody even uses a paper tax return. Like, how the
I was in junior high school.
Definitely.
I remember that one day that we got shown a tax return. It was grade 8. I think it was grade 9. No, grade 10. So what can we do? What if you were to give people 2 or 3 pieces of advice that they looked at each month, or in regards to either life insurance, or what's a great way to start investing in yourself for the long-term future? Like what are the steps that you would look at as to how to decide how much money to put away? I, for example, put $70 a month. It's not very much, but it's, that was a decision that I came to after I sold the house, and it was like, I don't really need that much investment. I need a critical illness policy. I need very little. And now I'm looking at how well it's doing, and I'm going, maybe I should bump that up a little, So what do you need to do to start making those decisions?
Absolutely. Well, I think that the hardest part about putting money aside for anything is kind of twofold. One, it means that you don't get to use the money. And I think that a lot of times we get so caught up in the buzz of whatever is sexy or whatever people are talking about. And we're very influenced by wanting to do what is cool, as opposed to just following kind of the boring, pay yourself first, put money away every month, regular, steady, slow and steady wins the race, all of that kind of, like, I think that there's definitely a little bit of a stigma around wanting to do what's cool. And sometimes insurance gets left out of that conversation. And I think that there's also, the ability to just let go of any kind of judgment or beliefs that we have about it not being enough or what we can't accomplish, and just start and talk to a professional, because they're always happy to work with you. I have clients where I had a new investment client a little while ago, and she wanted to know what I would make off of, what my commission would be on the investments that we put together. So, I sat down, I calculated, and I said, well, I'll make about $12. And she was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I've wasted your time. And I was like, no, because building the relationship is what any good advisor wants to do. And we're not in it for that quick payout. We're in it for the long haul and for building the relationship. But I think that an important conversation to have is, the analogy of the most important part of any house is always a strong foundation. And it's a cheesy analogy, but we keep using it because it just—
I've been using it all week, actually.
Yeah.
So perfect.
So I think that a lot of people, when they get caught up in the hype of, Bitcoin or this investment or that investment, well, maybe not Bitcoin anymore, but when they get caught up in whatever is new and cool and wanting to talk about investments, they're setting aside this money where if anything was to happen to them, if their income was to get interrupted, if they were not able to go to work, if they got sick, if the breadwinner of the family passed away, everything that they had spent the last however many years working towards would just absolutely crumble and fall apart. So putting that base layer, that financial foundation, the house foundation in place first, it's boring, but it's so important.
Well, I think it was Earl Nightingale I was listening to. He was talking about, putting that 10% away. And he was talking about that one brick. When you see a brick, this is an old visualization because most houses aren't made of brick anymore, but a foundation is still made of some sort of mortar, and laying that first brick, and you don't visualize how that's going to be a house, and that second brick, that third brick. But we need to start laying those bricks to build the house. So we can get to the roof part and feel safe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the super cheesy, again, finance is full of cheesy analogies and interesting puns, which I am delighted by. But I mean, even the analogy of if you had a money printing machine in your basement, I know I can't even say it with a straight face anymore. But yeah, just the idea of protecting our most important asset, which is always going to be ourselves. And when it comes to investing, especially for entrepreneurs, especially for anyone who's younger, or even for people who are older, I'm a big proponent of the best investment you're ever going to make is going to be in yourself. So how can you invest in yourself? Where can you put your money that's going to get you a much higher return than any savings program in the market would? So investing in yourself, starting a financial plan and having it be just that, actually being a plan, getting the foundation in place first, working towards other goals, not feeling constrained by, oh, well, this is what, so-and-so told me that I should have saved, or what the neighbors are doing, right? Just being true to ourselves and looking after what we actually care about.
Yeah.
And then also understanding, it's so interesting to understand more about ourselves and our psychological relationship to money, and what does money mean to us. If we're struggling to save, why might that be, right? Like, one of the things that I can only do so much as an advisor is, I can only lead the horse to water, right? I can only show somebody, here's the red pill, here's the blue pill. I can't make somebody save. I can't force someone to change their habits, and I would never want to be somebody cracking a whip behind them, because one, that's no fun, and two, it just doesn't work, right? So people have to understand what their limiting beliefs are on their own, and then start taking action.
Well, that's what I found, spending time on it every day for 30 days. It doesn't seem like a really big deal, but
amazing.
It's just like, I've started noticing, for example, I was talking earlier while I was waiting for you, is my MailChimp bill came in for the ladies meeting, and it went up by $5. And I don't know if I would have noticed that before. And it was like, how am I reacting to that bill? And it was like, instead of being like, oh, $5 more, I gotta go find $5 more, I was like, wow, that means the reason that the bill went up is because the mailing list went up. And typically a mailing list should be worth, I hope one day, $1 a person, right? So it's like, well, then I should be able to make that $5 back because it went up $5 per 1,000 people. So, how are you looking at your bills and being grateful that you're paying them, instead of having that immediate negative reaction is one of my first goals this month, and just being grateful that I have the money to pay them. I have a job and I have my side hustle. And if I need to find another way to pay a little bit extra into something, once I'm realizing why I'm buying them, why they're good for me, what that bill does for me, I'm going to have more energy to put into it and towards it.
Absolutely. I think that being grateful for what we have, and just gratitude anywhere in life, it returns 1,000-fold. It's the most amazing thing. I'm super cheesy, and I keep a little gratitude journal, and every night I write in it, and it just adds to the quality of my life so dramatically. And there's actually sorry, Jeff, but I'm gonna share this line. Another advisor who is a fantastic advisor told me the funniest saying the other day. He's just like, taxes are a luxury item. Not everyone can afford them.
That's a very good way to put it.
And I think it's very true. Like, even something like taxes, like feeling grateful that we're earning the money that we have to pay them. I mean, it's all in mindset, and it's all in.
Well, it's actually funny you bring that up, because my bookkeeper, she's like, well, your tax bill is going to be $5,000. I'm like, I sold 2 houses and my tax bill is $5,000 for my capital gains. I'm like, thank you. She's like, huh? I was expecting to be a lot more, and I was just like, wow, well, I know I had I'll be able to pay that off. It's not a problem. And I was just grateful. It sounds funny. I was grateful for that tax bill because it was absolutely a luxury to be charged that amount of money because it was because I made money.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at it that way and just being grateful is so important. Pinch myself for a moment.
Yeah. No, I think that it's definitely keeping that attitude of gratitude.
Awesome. And hey, did you finish your children's book that you were writing?
Yeah.
Want to give it a little plug? Where do we find it?
I can send it to you.
Ooh, can people find it online or?
It's not up on Amazon yet, no.
Okay.
But once it is, I can let you know.
Awesome. Well, if you have a copy, bring it to the ladies' meeting on the 29th. I would love to see it.
Cool.
We'll do
so
author,
just to let
author
everyone know what she's talking about is me and a couple of the advisors that I work with and partner up with. We put together a book for new parents that's called Baby Steps, Finance 101 for Parents. And so it's just a great checklist in there, a list of everything that new parents need to know about, and a lot of really important information about finances in one easy to read and easy to find location.
Perfect. And I know 2 new parents I'd love to give a copy to.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't gone and met Angela's little boy yet, Kingston, but sounds like he's thriving and doing well. So, all right. Well, I look forward to getting a copy of that book and seeing it and letting us know when it's available online. We can add it to your bio and blog post that we have on the ladies' meeting as well.
Mm-hmm.
Add that link in there.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it's online by the end of next week because we're super close to it. So
congratulations. That's such an amazing, it's a huge achievement. It's a huge achievement to get a book out there, especially when it applies to your industry and can really show people that you are the professional in your field of what you do.
Mm-hmm.
So
well,
awesome. Thanks. I really appreciate you taking a long weekend morning with me. This is amazing. Hopefully next time we get together, it won't be online. It will be out for a hike obviously at the ladies' meeting, but it would be great to get outdoors as well if you want to come up one day. So
we will. We'll go and get our fitness
and if you
on.
want, sorry?
I said we'll go and get our fitness on.
That sounds good. I live in the best place in the world for that. Maybe paddle.
You really do. I don't know. Are we supposed to talk about personal things on here? I'm going to be house sitting up in Squamish for a good chunk of June. So I'm going to be in your hut.
Sweet. And I have rides.
Yeah. I'm super excited.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay. That sounds awesome. So if you want to find Sylvia and I, you can go to theladiesmeeting.com. We are also on Instagram under the ladies meeting, and we are on Twitter under my ladies meeting because we are one letter too long to be the ladies meeting. And we meet on the last Tuesday of every month at the Sylvia Hotel. And we will also be online. We've got our foundation courses, and I will be starting master classes on the website as well soon. And look forward to seeing you live and in person, Sylvia.
Awesome. I'll see you soon, my love. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to stop this recording now, and I'm going to stop Facebook Live.
This podcast has been produced by the Communication Studio and Anissa Carruthers at the Studio C. If you'd like to find out more about the ladies' meeting, please join us online at theladiesmeeting.com. Under our live events page, you'll find our luncheons on the last Tuesday of every month except December, retreats, and our foundation courses you can take online, and we'll have them live and in person as well. And we look forward to seeing you.